What's the creepiest thing that you've seen other families do that they accept as totally normal? I went to this guy's house once after school. I wasn't friends with him, but we were assigned to a project together. We'll call him Gary. We were 16 at the time. Anyways, we were working on this project when he excused himself to use the restroom. 15 minutes later he returned. A little while later, I decided to use the restroom while he was making snacks. I walked into the bathroom and behold, before my eyes, floating like a manatee through the brown estuaries of Florida, was the result of Gary's earlier bathroom excursion. I shrugged it off. We all forget at least once, right? Flushed for him, took a leak, flushed again, and went to work on the project. Gary's mom gets home from work a couple hours later. She nods to us and says hello politely before heading towards the back of the house. A few seconds later she returns to the kitchen where we were working and screams, "Where is it?" I jump and am confused, so I shoot a "what a fact" look to Gary. Gary muttered, "It wasn't me, it was him." His mom glared at me, huffed, and walked out. Gary later explained that every day after school he would take a dump and was required to leave it in the toilet so his mom could check it. He wasn't even sick or anything, she just wanted to check it to make sure he was healthy or something. I never went back to Gary's house. Not drinking anything with dinner. They would have dinner, then after dinner someone would bring out a pitcher of water and glasses and they'd sit around the table, all drink their glasses of water without talking, put them down, and walk away. I had a friend whose family did this. I ate dinner with them once. They had water glasses on the table, but weren't allowed to have a drink until after dinner as the water would make them full and then they wouldn't eat all their food. I did not know these rules, because who would, and took a sip. Everyone stopped eating and looked at me. My friend whispered, "What are you doing? We don't drink while we are eating." Went to a friend's house when I was 17. She asked her mom for a snack and her mom brought out a huge raw white onion completely slathered in mayo on a plate, and she and my friend just went at it with their forks like it was filet mignon. 3 years later and I still think about that shit from time to time. An old friend's mom was completely paranoid that Al-Qaeda would storm the small British town they lived in. Her solution? Have a massive bomb shelter built under their house. Not the weird part though. About 5 times a year, she would spend literally thousands and thousands of pounds on groceries to stock the shelter with. By this, I mean she would genuinely buy out the whole supermarket. It would take her about 20 trips over a week. Not just canned food, but perishables too. I only found this out by sleeping over on one of her shopping days, where food covered literally every single surface of their massive house. My friend just shrugged it off and was, "Oh yeah, just restocking our bomb shelter. We always need to be ready for invasion." The fuck? The act itself isn't creepy, but I was very creeped out until I realized what was happening. I was at my SO's house, and her mom was cooking and said, "I think it's about that time." Immediately the entire family, mom, dad, and 6 siblings, started simultaneously mumbling something I couldn't understand. After they finished and saw the look on my face, my SO said they just said grace. But everybody is in a rush to eat, which is why I couldn't hear what they were saying. I thought they were going to sacrifice me. I went to a friend's house and we put some cartoons on. While we were watching I asked him a question but he didn't respond. He was fixated on the TV, absolutely glued. His childminder just laughed. "Oh, he'll be like that all evening now." So I just had to wait for my parents to pick me up whilst he unflinchingly watched TV for hours. Encouraging their teen daughters to have kids as early and as often as possible because then they could live off welfare and child support, and wouldn't need to work. Not other family, but still one day my parents decided I'm big enough to start coming back home from school on my own. But apparently I wasn't old enough to get my own set of keys. I used to spend 1 to 2 hours every day sitting on a doormat, waiting for my sister to come back from school and let me in. I was often really hungry and peed my pants at least 5 times. I was around 10 at the time. Our neighbors, who saw me there every day, said nothing. Wonder if it was creepy for them. Oh, and we were a middle-class family. After half a year my parents decided I am trustworthy and made this big funny ceremony of giving me the keys. Made me sign this funny contract of the key bearer and shit. Wasn't that funny for me? They still sometimes make jokes about me not being responsible enough at the age of 10 to even keep the keys. I went on a road trip with a friend's family one time. It was a 5-hour drive, and the entire time, no one spoke. It was completely silent. No music, no talking, nothing. And even though they had drank tons of liquids before getting in the car, no one had to pee during that 5-hour drive. Weirdest and most unsettling drive of my life. Definitely has to be my neighbors when I was younger. I hung out and played with these 3 siblings. They were all pretty normal kids, but the moms seemed kind of clingy. During the summer we would play outside a lot. Baseball, hockey, go-karts, swimming, the norm. Every single day at about 12, the mom would call the kids back to the house, one at a time. They would have to go inside for about a half hour, then come out and the next kid would go in. Never thought too much about it, until one day I was actually in their house with them and found out why she called them. She had mandatory cuddle time with each of the kids. They would lay on the couch, and she would spoon them, in the quiet, for about 30 minutes each. Weirdest thing I've ever encountered. Something that I have witnessed for years only began to hit me as the realization slowly unfolded. A family that I visited frequently with all adult children who still live with their parents would coincidentally always have the same exact movie. It was called Just Ask My Children, on every single time I visited. They all huddle around as though they are only watching it for the first time. Once, when I actually stayed over for a longer duration, when the movie finally ended, the TV was finally turned off only to be turned on again and the play button was then pressed for the same movie. I finally realized that this movie is watched multiple times a day, every single day, almost like a ritual, and all the members of the family react the same way to the same scene repeatedly as if they have never seen it before. I know a woman who was a manager at the restaurant my wife worked at who was living through her 13-year-old girl to an extreme level. The girl would come up to the restaurant from school and her mom would trash her for how shitty her makeup was and ask her how she expected to get Brent or Jason or whoever looking like that. 90% of what she talked about with coworkers was her daughter's school drama. Talked about how she encouraged boys coming over and how she liked to spy, and with a twinkle of pride, told us how she walked in daughter's room recently and found her coming out from under the covers in her bed this boy was in, right in the middle of a possible BJ. I was 16 dating a 14-year-old, and this could easily have been her mom. She was always trying to get us to fuck, basically made rules that meant the only way I could see her daughter was to spend hours in the girl's bedroom, just the girl and me, and yet we usually ended up in bed. But this was the 90s and we were taught that having sex would lead immediately to pregnancy and death by HIV/AIDS, so we usually just spent hours between third base and home plate, but never scored any runs, because, pregnancy and death. I have an ex whose family would literally burn any meat they cooked for dinner. Chicken, fish, steak, all completely burned. They were terrified about bacteria on their food. I got them to cook my steak medium well, less burned, but still above well, once, but I got some serious looks of disgust. The mother also forced me to draft a living will and instructed me on the proper way to seal a room to protect from a very likely chemical attack with duct tape and plastic sheeting. My family collected dead people cards. When my grandparents would go to funerals, they would get those obituary cards with pictures and stuff and collect them. I think it started out as getting them for memory purposes, but then they'd get them for other people, and it became like a card game. My grandparents and their friends would trade them, and they coveted the ones that had misspellings or limited edition more. I didn't realize it was weird forever, and Mom's still in denial that it was weird. We had to throw out boxes of dead people cards when my grandparents died, and their still living friends actually got mad that we didn't distribute them again. What a fact. Not sure if this is creepy or just flat out disgusting. When I was about 14 or 15, I would go over to this girl's house. I am also female, and we would hang out, blah blah blah. One day she came out of her parents' room with something in her mouth. At first I didn't realize what it was, but once she sat back down on the couch, I saw that it was a fucking vibrator. In her mouth. On. I kind of flipped shit and asked her what the hell she was doing. She said her gums hurt, so she was massaging them. The bad, sad, disgusting, weird thing was that she didn't even know it was a vibrator. She found it in her parents' room one day and thought it was for your teeth gums. On top of that, her parents knew she used it for that purpose because they walked in and talked to her while she had it in her mouth. I didn't go back. I went to elementary school with this really nice girl. She was the eldest of 4 girls, all perfectly healthy and beautiful. Kids were laughing at her because she was smelling really bad. I talked to her about it, and she told me that her mother makes her wear the same cloths for a week before washing them. Her mother was really busy praying to have a son. She was in the church at 6 a.m. every morning and spent a lot of time there, always praying to have a son. Well, the miracle happened and she had a son. That's all they could talk about. It was like Jesus himself was reborn. It was weird. Maybe 2 to 3 ago I saw her in the bus. The first thing she told me, after not seeing each other for maybe 30 years, was, "Did you know I have a brother?" I was speechless. My longtime friend growing up, she and her sister would walk around their house completely naked in front of their little brothers, dad, and uncle. We were 15 at the time. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.